Ah, you feel that. That tug, that quiet shift beneath your skin. It's not your nerves. It's not your mind playing tricks. No, it's something else, something real, something ancient. Like a whisper tucked beneath the chaos, humming just low enough to make you question everything. You've been restless, haven't you? Pacing your life like a cage. Wondering why the ground doesn't feel like it used to. Why your reflection's been looking back with unfamiliar eyes. It's not confusion. It's preparation. Oh, you thought this was about ease. About stepping into a prettier version of the same old mess. No, no. This isn't some bedtime story where everything clicks into place with a soft little sigh and a string quartet playing in the background. This is a rearrangement, a reprogramming, something that doesn't ask for permission or offer explanations. You're not being moved for comfort. You're being moved for purpose. And purpose doesn't care how cozy your seat was. It flips the table, sets the room on fire, and says, now build something new. You see, comfort is a trap wrapped in warm fabric and polite routines. It's the lullaby they feed you to keep you in line. Wake up, work, smile, nod, repeat. All while your bones are screaming for something real. But comfort won't give you that. It'll give you numbness, and they know it. That's why they sell it like salvation. A couch, a raise, a filtered photo, a like, a laugh track. But underneath it all, there's a noise you can't shut off. Something's missing, something's moving. And it isn't satisfied with survival anymore. You didn't ask for this shift, did you? You didn't circle a date on the calendar and say, let's destroy everything safe and familiar. No. It crept in while you were busy pretending things were fine. It waited until you got tired of explaining away the hollowness. And then it whispered, not loudly, just enough to crack the illusion. Just enough to make you wonder if maybe you're meant for something more. But more doesn't mean easier. That's the catch. They don't tell you that. Purpose sounds pretty until you realize it means losing your grip on everything that never truly belonged to you. People, places, titles, labels, gone. One by one, stripped off like costumes after the play ends. And what's left? Just you. The real you. The one you've been dodging. The one they couldn't quite mold. The one who hears things others pretend don't exist. And now, the ground beneath your feet is moving. Not to hurt you, not to break you, but to align you, to stretch you, to tear you away from everything that made you forget how powerful you actually are. That's the kind of movement this is. Relocation of the soul. Divine demolition. Not gentle, but necessary. And it's not waiting for your comfort. It doesn't need your approval. It's already begun. You've felt it. The restlessness, the discontent that no vacation or paycheck can cure. The sense that something is ending, but not you. Not this time. Because this isn't a collapse. It's a rerouting. A divine detour. Not to some fairy tale version of life, but to the real thing. The raw thing. The thing with scars and fire and spine. The thing that can't be faked. And it's dragging you out of the lie, whether you like it or not. So hold on. Not to what's leaving, but to what's rising. Because comfort never birthed anything worth remembering. But purpose. Purpose tears you apart just to show you what was buried underneath the mask you called me. You ever sit in silence so loud, it feels like screaming. Not the kind that comes from sirens or alarms, but that internal roar, the one that hums behind your eyes and laughs when you try to distract yourself. That's what isolation feels like. Not peace, not rest. No. It's the raw, bitter rehearsal for something bigger. You think you're being punished, that you're alone because something's wrong with you. Cute. That's exactly what they want you to believe. That you've been abandoned, forgotten, left behind. But no, my friend, you were chosen for this quiet. Training never happens in front of a crowd. The sharpening, the breaking, the rebuilding, it happens in the dark. In the shadows where no one's clapping. No validation, no applause. Just you and your thoughts, you and your monsters, you and the mirror that won't lie to you no matter how many filters you try to throw over it. Because that mirror knows, and deep down, so do you. You weren't meant to stay hidden, but you had to be hollowed out first. And that part hurts. People don't understand that kind of silence. They fear it. They mock it. Because it reveals too much. It shows them what they've been running from. But you were forced to sit in it. To listen. Every fake friend vanished. Every distraction crumbled. You were stripped to the core. And what was left? Just that relentless fire. That voice you tried to silence. The one that kept whispering, "You're not done. Not even close." Funny, isn't it? They said isolation would break you, that you'd fade without their approval, their likes, their empty noise. But here you are, still breathing, still twitching, still holding on to something even you can't name yet. And that something, that's the evidence. That's the proof that isolation wasn't punishment. It was preparation. Because the ones who are sent ahead, they don't travel in packs. They're forged in silence, alone. So when the fire comes, and oh, it's coming, they won't be afraid to walk through it. You weren't benched. You were benedicted, set apart, not to rot, but to rise. Because something about you unsettled the norm. Something in you made them nervous. And instead of facing that, they called you too much, too intense, too deep. But really, you were just too real. And real doesn't fit inside their plastic boxes. So they left. Or maybe you left first, doesn't matter. The result's the same. A clearing, silence, a sacred space they didn't know was holy. In that silence, you found pieces of yourself that had been drowned by noise. You remembered how to move without being watched, how to breathe without performing, how to speak without editing every word for palatability. You remembered how dangerous you were before they convinced you to behave. That's what isolation does. It removes the leash. It unhooks the muzzle. And suddenly the version of you they buried starts clawing its way back. This isn't weakness. It's war paint. It's sharpening the blade. It's learning to be your own echo. Because when the next move comes, and it will, you won't need a cheer squad or a spotlight. You'll be ready. You'll be quiet. You'll be dangerous. And you'll be walking with something that wasn't born in the light, but built in the absence of it. They always say timing is everything. As if life is some carefully orchestrated play, each act rehearsed, each line written in advance, each cue called by someone with a headset behind the curtain. But what if I told you there is no script, no director? Just a wild, chaotic stage and a spotlight that flickers on when you least expect it. Most people spend their lives waiting for permission to speak, to act, to move. They wait for the right time, the right people, the right feeling. But the truth, that moment doesn't exist. The only real moment is now, and it's always inconvenient. That's why it matters. See, there's this illusion, a cozy little lie that says you're not ready, that you need to fix a few more things, heal a little more, learn a little more, be more polished, like you're some product on a shelf waiting for perfect packaging before you're allowed to be seen. But you're not a product, you're a weapon. And weapons don't wait for comfort. They respond to conflict. You weren't made to be safe, you were made to be used, and not in the disposable sense, in the divine sense, like a key that only fits a lock forged in fire. You think God moves people when they feel strong, confident, steady? No, that's not how it works. He moves you when you're trembling, when your voice cracks, when your knees buckle. That's when the shift comes. Because in that moment, you stop pretending you're in control. You stop relying on your tiny plans and your little backup strategies. You surrender not in weakness, but in recognition that something bigger has taken over. That something unseen just stepped in and changed the rules. And you either move with it or get dragged. Now let's talk about the fear. That crawling, choking thing that shows up the second you feel that nudge. You know the one. It tells you it's too risky, too soon, too uncertain. That maybe if you just wait a little longer, the fear will go away. But it won't. It never does. Because the fear is not the enemy. It's the signal, the evidence that you've just hit the edge of the map. The part where things get real. The part they never taught you about. And that's exactly where you're supposed to be. You weren't created for comfort zones and polite applause. You weren't designed to tiptoe through life hoping not to disturb anyone. You were built for impact, for disruption, for fire. And fire doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't check the weather. It just burns. That's what movement looks like. Sudden, unreasonable, divine. The moment God moves you, it won't make sense. It won't feel safe, but it will be right. And somewhere deep inside, past all the fear and hesitation, you'll know. You'll feel that flicker, that inner detonation, that pull that says, go now. And when you do, don't expect a parade. Don't expect everyone to cheer. They won't. In fact, most will try to stop you. Not because they care, but because your movement threatens their stagnation. Your obedience exposes their fear. That's how you know it's real. When your decision to move triggers their decision to stay. And suddenly, you're not just leaving a place, you're leaving a pattern. And patterns hate being broken. They will scream. They will beg. They will guilt you into staying small, but you can't. Not anymore. Because the shift has already happened. The fire's already lit. The path's already cracked open beneath your feet. They'll tell you to stay calm. They'll whisper it like a lullaby. Just relax. Everything will sort itself out. But they don't see what you see, do they? They don't hear the ticking behind the silence. The kind of ticking that doesn't come from a clock, but from pressure. From something building behind the scenes, pressing against the seams of your routine, daring to burst through the cracks. And you try to play along. You nod, you smile, you say all the right things. But deep down, something's scratching at your chest like it wants out. Like it's been locked away for too long, breathing stale air and pretending everything's fine. The world doesn't like people who notice too much. You start asking questions. People start calling you paranoid. You start moving differently. People say you've changed. And maybe you have. Maybe that's the whole point. Because you were never meant to stay frozen in the same cycle, repeating the same lines, chasing approval from people who don't even know who they are. You were made for something louder, something heavier, something more disruptive. And disruption doesn't come wrapped in polite conversation. It comes in chaos. It comes when you stop asking for signs and start being the sign. You know the weight you've been carrying. You've memorized it. It became your identity for a while. Wore it like armor. Heavy but familiar. Until one day you looked around and realized you weren't even walking. You were dragging. Dragging your purpose behind you like some broken toy you didn't know how to fix. You convinced yourself it was noble, that suffering in silence was strength. But let me ask you, who told you that your silence was sacred? Who convinced you that being small was spiritual, that hiding was holy? Because the truth is, some of the loudest movements are the ones no one sees coming. The ones that start quietly in a storm of thought and end with a roar. The shift doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs your yes. And when that shift comes, when it truly arrives, you won't be able to explain it. People will ask what changed, and you won't have an answer. Because it's not about logic. It's not about strategy. It's about surrender. The kind of surrender that doesn't look pretty. It looks like pacing at 3 a.m. It looks like deleting the plan. It looks like walking away from everything that once felt safe just because something inside of you started screaming that it's time. See, what they don't tell you is that elevation doesn't look like winning. It looks like breaking. It looks like losing things you thought you needed. People you thought were permanent, paths you thought were paved. It looks like isolation and confusion and silence so loud it deafens everything inside you except the truth. And that truth, it's simple. You're not who you used to be. You can't go back. And deep down, you don't even want to. They watch you like they're waiting for something. Like they expect you to fold, to flinch, to fall right back into the little box they built for you. Smile here, nod there. Speak only when spoken to. They crafted a version of you that doesn't shake the table, doesn't raise the volume, doesn't ask why too often. They like that version, predictable, passive, easy to manage. But then something snapped. Or maybe it didn't snap. Maybe it cracked. Slowly, quietly. A little more every day. Every time you swallowed the truth. Every time you laughed when you wanted to scream. Every time you shrank to make someone else comfortable. People like comfort. They crave routine. They'd rather keep their illusions intact than face the disruption of your truth. Because your growth exposes their stagnation. Your fire reveals their frost. Your questions make them squirm because deep down they've got the same questions, they just buried them deeper. So when you start changing, when you stop performing, when you strip away the mask they handed you, they get nervous. Not because you're wrong, but because you might be right. And if you're right, then what does that mean for everything they've pretended to believe? You want to know what scares them. It's not your age, it's not your past, it's not even your ambition, it's your awareness, your refusal to sleepwalk through life, your ability to see beyond the script. That's the real threat, not your years, but your clarity. And what they don't understand, they try to label. You're being dramatic. You've changed. You're too intense. No, you're just awake. And once you wake up, you can't go back to dreaming, not when the dream was a lie built to keep you quiet. They'll throw distractions at you dressed as opportunities. They'll offer applause in exchange for your authenticity. They'll trade love for loyalty, hoping you won't notice the difference. And if you push back, if you speak too loud, stand too tall, dream too big, they'll call you dangerous, but they won't say it to your face. Oh no, they're much too polished for that. They'll say it in whispers, in glances, in silence, hoping you'll hear it and dim yourself down just enough to make them feel tall again. But you've seen too much. You've felt the shift. You've tasted the truth, and now anything else tastes fake. You've watched people clap for you when you were broken because it made them feel superior, then vanish when you started putting yourself back together. You've watched them celebrate your humility when it looked like defeat, but get quiet when you started walking in purpose. Because confidence in someone else feels like arrogance when you don't have any of your own. You can't save them. You can't explain yourself into their comfort zone. You weren't born to make people feel okay with staying the same. You were born to disrupt, to challenge, to shake the ground they thought was solid. And that means sometimes you'll walk alone. Sometimes the only voice cheering for you will be your own. Sometimes growth feels like grief because you're mourning the version of you they loved before you remembered who you were, before you decided that being underestimated was a gift, because it let you build in the dark, move in silence, plot your return without the noise. And now they feel the shift. They sense it. It rattles their small talk. It breaks through their sarcasm. You walk in rooms differently now. You speak like you mean it. You don't ask for permission, you carry presence. That's what they're scared of. Not your age. Your becoming. Your refusal to shrink. That's the threat. That's the storm they didn't prepare for. They always assume the one who stays quiet is the weakest in the room. Funny how the loudest ones are usually the most afraid. The ones who bark orders, demand applause, flaunt their wins like trophies. They're clinging to control, desperate for it. But you've been quiet for a reason, haven't you? Not because you lack the fire, but because you've been stacking it layer by layer. Every disappointment, every overlooked moment, every time you were pushed aside, you didn't forget. You remembered, you recorded, you stored it all like ammunition for something they won't see coming. See, reinforcement doesn't show up like a superhero in the sky. It arrives in fragments, in the stillness, in the weight of clarity that presses against your chest at 3 a.m. It arrives in people you never expected, in timing that feels wrong, but is in fact precisely right. Reinforcement doesn't ask for your permission, it just walks in, pulls up a chair and says, "Let's burn this old version of you down." They thought you needed saving, but you weren't drowning, you were diving. Deep, into yourself, into the wreckage, into the parts no one else had the courage to face. And when you come back up, you're not gasping for air, you're dragging the whole ocean with you. That's what they don't get. You didn't want a lifeline. You became the storm that swallowed the shore. Reinforcement isn't always wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it's messy, raw. Sometimes it looks like a person who challenges you in all the ways you never asked for. But they see you, not the version you pretend to be, not the smile you wear to survive. They see underneath, and instead of running, they stay. They stay when it's ugly, when it's hard, when your mind spirals and your faith flickers like a dying bulb. They don't flinch. That's your clue. You're not being rescued. That was never the point. Rescue implies helplessness, implies someone stronger came to pull you from the flames. No, you're being reinforced. There's a difference. Rescue says you couldn't do it without them. Reinforcement says you were already doing it, already fighting, already crawling through the chaos. But now you've got backup. Now you've got someone to hold the line when your arms shake. Someone who knows your silence isn't defeat, it's recalibration. You thought you were alone because no one clapped when you moved. No one cheered when you broke patterns. But reinforcement doesn't always show up with applause. Sometimes it stands in silence beside you, waiting for you to remember who you are. Not the version that settled, the one they tried to bury with expectations, guilt, fear. But here you are, breathing fire again. Not because you were saved, but because someone walked in, handed you a match and said, "I've seen your ashes. Now let's build from them."